Rain tapped against the wide office windows like an impatient drummer, and I remember thinking how fitting it was. That the sky itself seemed restless, just like me. My hands trembled slightly as I packed the last of my things into the cardboard box they'd given me. A framed photo of my team from 3 years ago, a mug with the company logo half faded from use, and a few pens I'd bought myself when the office stopped ordering supplies. Across the hall, through the glass divider, laughter echoed. The sound of clinking glasses, music, and celebration drifted into my empty cubicle. My boss, Richard, stood at the center of it all, his expensive suit gleaming under the fluorescent lights, holding a champagne flute high. Around him, my former colleagues were smiling, nodding, pretending not to look in my direction. Finally, I heard Richard's voice, muffled but clear enough through the glass. Someone competent. She'll clean up Ellen's mess. My fingers froze around a stack of reports. My mess. The system I built, the processes I designed, the clients I secured. All reduced to a mess. I turned just enough to see her. Amanda, the new innovation specialist they'd hired. She looked fresh out of a management seminar. Sleek ponytail, white blazer, confidence sharp as glass. She was smiling at his words, maybe politely, maybe smugly. It didn't matter. I was already being erased. Security arrived right on cue. They were polite, careful not to make it a scene. Company policy, one of them muttered as I was escorted past the glass wall where Richard's team was raising their glasses. My reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes, rain-slick hair, and the faintest smile. Because what none of them knew, not Richard, not Amanda, not anyone, was that I'd already made my move. But we'll get to that. Right now, I was still the dismissed employee, the scapegoat, the woman who'd given 6 years of her life to a company that couldn't even spare a proper goodbye. When I reached the parking lot, the rain had turned into a full storm. The cardboard box sagged under the weight of my belongings. My car, a faded silver sedan, felt like a coffin as I sat there, staring at the neon glow of the building I'd practically lived in. 6 years. I'd built their client data architecture from scratch, the one thing that made their department profitable. And yet, Richard had been circling for months, whispering to upper management about my inefficiencies. I worked long hours, but not loud hours. Amanda, though, she was loud. She knew the right buzzwords, the right smiles. Modernize, simplify, automate words that sound smart until you realize they mean replace. I drove home through the rain, each drop a metronome to my unraveling thoughts. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just replayed the past few months in my mind. The sudden exclusion from meetings, the vague performance reviews, the subtle push to document everything I did. They wanted my system, but they didn't want me. I made myself tea when I got home, though I didn't drink it. My phone buzzed with a single email. Subject: transition completed. From Richard Hall. Body: thank you for your contributions, Ellen. Wishing you all the best in your future endeavors. Corporate condolences, sterile and cold. I laughed quietly, because my contributions were more intricate than Richard could ever comprehend. He thought he'd taken everything. He hadn't even begun to understand what he'd lost. Still, I barely slept that night. My mind kept looping through the same image. Amanda's confident smile, Richard's smug toast, the clinking of glasses. By morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight poured into my kitchen as if pretending nothing had changed. I opened my laptop, logged into my backup system, and scrolled through lines of code and access logs. The infrastructure I'd designed. The system that ran their entire client coordination platform. The one that wasn't broken when I left, but could be if handled carelessly. At 10:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. 11:06, same number. 11:24. Another call. By noon, there were 9 missed calls. I smiled this time, not out of malice, but inevitability. Amanda had opened my files. You see, what Richard never understood is that my work wasn't just a checklist of functions or formulas. It was alive, adaptive. Every calculation, every parameter tied to context, only I understood. The documentation they demanded? It existed, of course, but not in the way they expected. Each piece referenced another, a living network designed to evolve, not obey. By the time I stepped out for lunch, the number of missed calls had reached 15. I stood on the balcony of the cafe, sipping my coffee slowly, watching clouds drift across the blue. Somewhere across the city, Amanda was probably panicking. Richard was probably shouting, and their precious system was starting to collapse under its own misunderstood complexity. And me? I was free. But the funny thing about freedom, it doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels like standing at the edge of everything you once believed in, watching it fall apart, and realizing you built the storm that's about to begin. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone had 38 missed calls. Most were from an unfamiliar number, but a few were from numbers I recognized. Former colleagues, people who'd stayed silent at that champagne toast. There were messages, too, fragments of panic that didn't make sense until I pieced them together. Ellen, please, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the system. It's crashing every hour. No one can fix it. The clients are furious. Richard's losing it. I stared at the screen for a long time, watching the little red notification count climb as new messages appeared. A quiet satisfaction warmed somewhere deep inside me, but it didn't feel as good as I imagined it would. Maybe because I knew what was coming. Chaos, lost data, angry clients, the very things I'd spent years preventing. Still, I didn't answer. Instead, I got dressed, made coffee, and went for a walk. The November air was cold and sharp. It cleared my head. People passed me on their way to work, clutching travel mugs, talking into phones, unaware that somewhere in the heart of the city, one company's lifeline was unraveling thread by thread. I'd seen it coming. The week before my firing, Richard had pushed for system simplification. He'd wanted control, shorter code, fewer dependencies, things that looked neat on paper but ignored the messy reality of human behavior and data. He didn't understand that the system was built around adaptive patterns. It learned, responded, predicted. It wasn't broken. It was alive. But Richard never liked anything he couldn't fully control. When I returned home, I made the mistake of opening my email. There were 20 new messages waiting. The latest was from Richard himself. Subject, urgent. Please respond. Ellen, we need your assistance immediately. Amanda's having issues with your setup. Something about client integrations failing. We're willing to compensate you for a consultation. Just a few hours of your time. Please call me back. Compensate. That word made me laugh out loud. As if money could make up for 3 years of late nights, missed birthdays, stress migraines, and the humiliation of being escorted out while they celebrated my replacement. I closed my laptop. For a few hours, I tried to distract myself. I did laundry. I even cooked, something I hadn't done in weeks. But every few minutes, my phone would buzz again. More missed calls. More messages. By the time I sat down for lunch, there were 67. Curiosity got the better of me, and I finally listened to one voicemail. It was Amanda. Ellen, it's me. Look, I think something's wrong with the integration mapping. Every time I try to reset the node, the system rejects the changes. The error logs keep referencing your username, even though we deactivated it. I can't fix this. Please just call me back. Her voice was trembling. That sharp confidence she'd displayed at the party had dissolved into panic. I could almost see her in that pristine white blazer, hair disheveled now, staring at screens that no longer obeyed her commands. But she wasn't wrong. The system was referencing me. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd built a safeguard months ago, when rumors about restructuring first began. A simple self-validation protocol tied to my credentials. If major edits were made without proper authorization, it would revert to a defensive mode. Not to destroy data, just to protect it from unverified manipulation. I'd told Richard about it once. He'd waved it off as over-engineering. So now, their own negligence had triggered the safeguard, and I was the only one who knew how to deactivate it. By evening, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. The phone was still buzzing on the coffee table. 83 calls by now. I didn't pick up. Instead, I thought about what all of this meant, about the quiet irony that my so-called mess had kept the company running smoothly for years, about how quick they'd been to replace me with someone who looked the part, spoke the right language, smiled at the right moments. But more than that, I thought about the people. The junior analysts, the project assistants, the interns who'd relied on that system to do their jobs. None of this was their fault. They were probably sitting in that office right now, watching everything fall apart, terrified they'd be blamed next. That thought unsettled me. I'd told myself I was done, that they deserved whatever consequences came from their arrogance. But watching the missed calls pile up, hearing Amanda's voice shaking with fear, I realized something I didn't want to admit. Part of me still cared. Not about Richard, not about the company, but about the work itself, the system I'd built, the people it was meant to help. I poured myself another coffee and opened my laptop again, logged into an old monitoring dashboard I'd kept for backup purposes. And there it was. The chaos in real time. Red alerts blinking across the screen like a city on fire. Client synchronization errors, integration failures, timeouts across every sector. The system was holding, barely, but one wrong command could send it into total collapse. I sat there for a long time, staring at those blinking warnings, listening to my phone vibrate every few seconds. Then I did something that surprised even me. I opened a new message. To amanda.h@kleinanalytics.com. Subject: Stop. Body: Don't touch anything else. Log out immediately. I'll be in touch. Ellen, I hesitated before hitting send. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't surrender. It was something else. Responsibility, maybe. Or maybe just unfinished business. As I pressed send, another voicemail arrived. This one from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Grant, this is Linda Chen, Deputy Director from the Department of Municipal Infrastructure. We were told you designed the Klein system now failing across the city's logistics network. We'd appreciate a call back. It's urgent, I froze. The city. I'd built something too big to fail. And now, if I didn't step in, real people would suffer. And for the first time since I was fired, I realized this was never just about revenge. It was about consequences. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my blinds, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a countdown. I'd barely slept after that voicemail from the city official. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dashboard. Blinking red alerts, system stalling, routes failing. What had begun as a quiet act of defiance was turning into something much bigger than I'd ever intended. By 8:15 a.m., my phone rang again. The same number. I let it go to voicemail once more. Then curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Ms. Grant, this is Deputy Director Linda Chen following up. The traffic coordination network your company installed last quarter is malfunctioning. Emergency services are reporting delays across multiple districts. We understand you were the lead architect. Please, we need your help. Her tone wasn't angry. It was urgent. Human. The kind of voice that carries the weight of responsibility. I sat there, still in my robe, coffee cooling beside me, feeling my pulse quicken. I'd built that system to improve the city's response coordination. Deliveries, ambulances, fire units. It wasn't just about analytics anymore. It was about lives. And now it was breaking apart. My chest tightened. The arrogance of Richard and Amanda, their careless meddling, had turned a corporate mistake into a public hazard. I could almost hear Richard in some boardroom right now, sweating through his shirt, trying to spin the disaster as a temporary software anomaly. A soft buzz drew my eyes to my phone again. A new message, this time from Irene, one of the junior engineers who used to report to me. Ellen, please. The mayor's office is furious. Richard's blaming you. Says you sabotaged the system before leaving. We all know that's not true, but they're talking legal action. Please call me. I stared at the screen. Sabotage. Of course he would say that. It was easier than admitting incompetence. I took a slow breath, then dialed Irene's number. She answered immediately, her voice trembling. Ellen? Oh, thank God. Everything's falling apart. Half the city grid's down. Ambulances are getting rerouted through manual dispatch. It's chaos. Stop touching the code, I said firmly. Tell Amanda and anyone else with access to log out now. No changes. None she already tried 3 resets, Irene whispered. It's getting worse. Of course it was. Every manual override confused the adaptive logic further. The system had been designed to adjust automatically to data flows, not to constant interference. Okay, listen carefully, I said, pulling my laptop closer. You'll need to isolate the East cluster. Disconnect from the main server, but don't delete anything. Just quarantine the node. You still have access? She asked. I never lost it. I typed in a sequence I hadn't used in months, and the familiar interface bloomed on my screen. A web of data points, each representing a piece of the network, flickered to life. Half were dim or red. The system was holding on by threads. Ellen, Irene said quietly, why are you helping? After what they did? I paused, watching the pulse of the city's digital veins flicker weakly on my monitor. Because if I don't, people will get hurt. This was never supposed to happen. I could hear the hum of panic in the background. Voices, keyboards, a faint buzz of tension that told me the office was unraveling. Richard's yelling again, Irene said. He said the city's threatening to terminate the contract. Amanda's in tears. Good, I muttered before catching myself. No, not good. Tell them I'll handle this, but from now on, no one touches a single file without my instruction. When the call ended, I sat back and let out a long breath. For the first time since being fired, I felt control slipping back into my hands. Not revenge. Control. I worked through the morning, patching connections remotely, isolating corrupted modules, reversing illogical commands. It was like performing surgery on something that was still alive but bleeding badly. At noon, my doorbell rang. I froze. No one ever came to my apartment unannounced. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a navy suit holding a folder. She looked exhausted. When I opened the door, she extended a hand. Miss Grant? Linda Chen, Department of Municipal Infrastructure. Her handshake was firm, but her eyes betrayed fatigue. I'm sorry to show up like this, but this situation's escalating faster than anyone expected. I stepped aside to let her in. You must have been given my home address by Richard. She gave a faint, apologetic smile. He said you were the only one who could fix it. Did he also tell you why? She sighed. He said you embedded proprietary locks that prevent others from maintaining the code. That's not true, I replied sharply. I built safeguards, yes, but to protect the system, not to sabotage it. Your problem is that they tried to rebuild something they didn't understand. Linda sat at my kitchen table, flipping open her folder. I don't care about office politics. Right now, ambulances are being delayed by 12 to 15 minutes on average. That's human lives. Can you help us? Her words hit me like cold water. I looked down at my laptop, at the blinking red nodes, and realized how far this had gone. Yes, I said finally, but I want terms. Her eyes narrowed. Terms? I won't work through Richard or Klein Analytics. If I help, I do it under direct contract with the city. Full creative control. My system, my way Linda studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. I can make that happen, but you need to act fast. I nodded, already typing, lines of code reflecting in my eyes like firelight. The city's grid was starting to pulse again, data streams shifting under my commands. Linda stood behind me, silent as I worked. After a few minutes, she whispered, You really did build something extraordinary, didn't you? Extraordinary, I said quietly, and misunderstood. By the time she left, the immediate crisis was stabilizing. A temporary patch. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because Richard would never accept that the woman he'd fired, the one he'd humiliated in front of everyone, had just saved his career. And somehow I suspected he'd try to twist it all again. But this time, I was ready. The following morning, I woke to another flood of messages, this time from unfamiliar numbers, many with official signatures. City engineers, consultants, reporters. My system fix had worked overnight. The grid was stabilizing, emergency routes were clearing, and the mayor's office had released a statement crediting an external specialist for restoring operations. An external specialist. That was me, though my name wasn't mentioned. Yet. My phone buzzed again. Irene. Ellen, you need to hear this. There's an emergency board meeting at 9. Richard's taking all the credit. Says he hired a third-party team to fix your code. I let out a dry laugh. Of course he was. Richard had always been predictable. The kind of man who lived for appearances, who'd rather lie smoothly than admit ignorance. But this time, there were witnesses. Thanks for letting me know, I said. Do you still have the link to the board's conference line? She hesitated. Ellen, you're not seriously thinking. I am. I spent the next 20 minutes preparing. I didn't have a suit or a title anymore, but I did have something better. Proof. Every change I'd made, every command executed from my console was logged and time-stamped. The city's data servers would show that my credentials had been the ones to stabilize the system. By 8:59 a.m., I clicked the link. The familiar corporate logo flashed on my laptop screen, followed by the tiled faces of the company's senior leadership. Richard was in the center, perfectly groomed, his voice smooth as he addressed the room. Yes, it was a close call, but thanks to swift action and the brilliant work of my team, we were able to restore full functionality to the system overnight. A few heads nodded. Others looked skeptical. And then one voice cut in. Excuse me, Richard, came Linda Chen's calm tone. That's not accurate. All eyes shifted to her square on the screen. She was seated in her office, city seal visible behind her. The system was repaired through a direct collaboration between my department and Ms. Ellen Grant, the original architect. The silence that followed was almost physical. Richard's smile faltered. I wasn't aware of any formal involvement, he managed. You weren't involved at all, Linda said. You've been unreachable since yesterday morning. My team made the executive decision to bypass client analytics entirely. Ms. Grant's solution prevented what could have been catastrophic failures. I watched Richard's face tighten. The micro-expressions of panic barely masked beneath corporate restraint. I decided that was my cue. Good morning, everyone, I said, unmuting myself. My face filled one of the empty screens. Several people jumped slightly. Ellen? One of the board members exclaimed. Richard's composure cracked. What are you doing here? This is a confidential meeting. Apparently not confidential enough to keep the truth out, I said. I'm here because my work saved your contract with the city. The same system you called a mess. He straightened, adopting his patronizing tone. Let's not exaggerate. The issue was a result of undocumented features in your code. If anything, you put us in this position. I smiled slightly. Undocumented? Richard, everything was documented. You just never read beyond the first page. I pulled up a file on my screen, sharing it through the meeting link. Here's the access log from the last 48 hours. You'll notice my credentials initiating the stabilizing protocols, followed by an authorization from the Department of Municipal Infrastructure. Your team's changes, on the other hand, I highlighted another column. Caused the initial collapse. One of the board members cleared his throat. Is that accurate, Richard? He glanced down, jaw clenched. I can't verify that at this time. Linda leaned forward. I can. My department confirmed it this morning. The chairman of the board spoke next, his voice low but sharp. This company nearly caused a public disaster. Ms. Grant, you're saying the failures were due to unauthorized changes after your dismissal? Yes, I said. And they ignored my warnings before that. I designed the system to be adaptive, not static. But Richard insisted on altering core logic to make it simpler. The result was instability that cascaded through the city's network. A murmur spread across the digital room. The chairman's face hardened. That aligns with reports we received from the city. Richard, this is a serious breach he tried to recover. We can fix this internally. There's no need to... But Linda cut him off. The city has already terminated its contract with Klein Analytics. Effective this morning, Ms. Grant has been appointed as lead consultant under municipal management. The room went silent again. Richard blinked rapidly. You can't... She can, I said quietly. And she did. The chairman sighed heavily. Richard, step out of the call. The board needs a private discussion. For a brief moment, our eyes met through the screen. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, then something almost like fear. He clicked leave meeting, and his square vanished. When the board returned a few minutes later, they didn't address me with hostility. One of them, a woman I'd never met, said, Ms. Grant, on behalf of the board, I'd like to apologize for how your departure was handled. Clearly, mistakes were made. Thank you, I said, though my tone stayed cool. But I'm not coming back. I ended the call before they could say another word. For a long time, I sat in silence, watching my own reflection in the dark screen. It wasn't triumph I felt. Not exactly. It was relief. The truth was finally out. But deep down, I knew Richard wasn't finished. Men like him rarely accepted defeat quietly. And as much as I wanted to move on, a part of me sensed the storm hadn't fully passed. Sometimes victory isn't the end. It's just the start of the reckoning. For 2 days after the board meeting, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Reporters, recruiters, ex-colleagues. Everyone suddenly wanted to talk to the woman they'd ignored a week earlier. I didn't answer most of them. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted quiet. But peace rarely comes that easily. On the third morning, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw him. Richard, still in one of his tailored suits, though this one looked wrinkled, like it hadn't been pressed since the chaos began. His tie hung loose, and the bags under his eyes were deep. For a moment, I considered not opening. Then curiosity won. I unlatched the door. Ellen, he said, forcing a strained smile. Can I come in? I don't think that's a good idea, I replied. He glanced around the hallway, lowering his voice. Please, just 5 minutes. Reluctantly, I stepped aside. He walked in, the faint smell of cologne mixed with stress following him. His eyes darted to my desk, where my laptop sat open, code lines glowing faintly on the screen. You're still working, he said quietly. I'm improving the city's grid, I answered. Something your team never learned how to do. He winced. I didn't come to argue. Then why are you here? He hesitated, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something genuine behind his polished facade. Fear. They're letting me go, he said flatly. Effective immediately. The board blames me for everything they should, I said. He looked at me sharply. You think this is funny? No, I said softly. But it's fair. He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. Ellen, I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve this. You've got to understand. I was under pressure from the board, from the investors. They wanted fast results. Brooke's resume looked good. Her name's Amanda, I interrupted. Whatever. They wanted someone who could modernize things. I thought, maybe you'd plateaued. I crossed my arms. So you fired me to prove a point? He looked down. I misjudged you. I studied him for a moment. He wasn't lying. He wasn't apologizing either, not fully. It was a statement of regret, not remorse. A subtle difference, but an important one. What do you want, Richard? He met my eyes. A chance to make this right. If you'd let me come on board under your new contract, maybe as an advisor, I could help smooth things with the remaining clients. I know the politics, you know the systems. Together we could— Stop, I said, raising a hand. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You celebrated while I was escorted out. You called my work a mess. Now you want to work for me? His mouth opened, then closed again. I need a second chance, he murmured. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered standing in that rain-soaked parking lot, cardboard box in hand, watching him toast to my replacement. Richard, I said evenly, you didn't just fire me. You erased me. You made me question my worth, my competence, my place in a field I built my life around. That kind of damage doesn't get undone with one apology or a new job title. He stared at the floor. For a moment, he looked smaller. Just another man who'd believed his own myth for too long. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded slowly. You should be. But I don't need your apology to move forward. I already did. He turned toward the door, defeated. I guess that's that. As he stepped out into the hall, I called after him. Richard? He stopped. Next time you hire someone more competent, I said, make sure you understand what you're replacing first. He didn't answer, just nodded once and walked away. When the door closed, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The apartment was silent except for the hum of my computer. I sat back down at my desk and looked at the new interface I'd been building. A refined version of the system, independent from any company. It wasn't just a program anymore. It was a statement. Proof that resilience can't be fired and brilliance can't be replaced. Later that afternoon, I met Linda Chen at City Hall to finalize my contract. She handed me the official document with a faint smile. Municipal Innovation Consultant, she read aloud. You'll oversee all future development and have full authority over the infrastructure network. Full authority, I repeated, letting the words sink in. You earned it, she said. The city owes you more than a paycheck. As I signed, I thought back to that first morning. The rain, the laughter, the humiliation. How small I'd felt. How certain I was that everything I'd built had been taken from me. And now here I was. Not with revenge, but redemption. When I left City Hall, the air was clear. The city hummed around me. Traffic flowing, lights synchronized, sirens cutting through intersections without delay. My system was alive again, stronger than before. I passed by Klein Analytics' glass tower on my walk home. Movers were carrying boxes out of the lobby. The logo on the wall was half removed. Richard's empire had fallen quietly, the way most empires do, from the inside. I didn't stop to watch. I just kept walking, the reflection of the city lights following me down the glass. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, my phone beside me. No missed calls, no frantic messages, just peace. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't need fire or chaos. Sometimes it's simply watching those who underestimated you realize they were never in control, and choosing not to look back. Because true power isn't about making them pay. It's about proving you never needed them to begin with.